Post-traumatic growth may be unfamiliar to you, so what exactly is it? The simple definition is a positive change or an emotional growth that can occur after a trial or trauma. Let me explain the theory using my own life example. April 7th, 2018 was a day I'll never forget. 1 week earlier, my younger brother of 29 years had decided his trials in life were too difficult to handle. The waves and anguish and pain that I felt after his suicide were almost more than I could bear. As someone working in treatment, I help many people who struggle with all sorts of challenges on a daily basis. But suddenly, I found myself facing a devastating trial that I was powerless to stop. As it turned out, my brother's suicide was the first blow. Another earth-shattering moment occurred when at his funeral, I was greeting my brother's friends who came to pay their last respects, and I was unexpectedly blown over in the worst way. I found myself shaking the hand of a man who had sexually abused me 38 years earlier when I was 11 years old. In an instant, I was confused, in shock, I couldn't move. A flood of memories and fears from my childhood came coursing through me, and I froze up. Now another brother standing next to me noticed something was wrong, and he stepped between me and my perpetrator. I somehow managed to walk out of the church that day and was even able to compose myself and return to the funeral service later. You may wonder how I survived this terrible experience. I wonder about that myself sometimes. But I had to rely heavily on my 50 years of life experiences, training, family support, and knowledge to help me get through those weeks that followed that awful day. My failure to help my younger brother, combined with my childhood memories, was so emotionally devastating and painful that it shook my foundation. A few weeks later, I returned to work trying to maintain my composure and strength even though I was in turmoil inside. As the weeks turned to months, I continued to struggle with the loss of my brother and with other adversities that would follow. My childhood sex abuse and my brother's suicide are personal struggles that have led me to find post-traumatic growth and become a trial tapper. At times in life, you may ask yourself, why? Why me? Why do these things happen to me or others that I know? Why do we have to go through trials? You may be wrestling with these questions right now. Trying to find the answers to these questions may be a lifelong journey. So trials and traumas are part of the universal experience that we must all endure during this life. Often people come to see me because they are struggling with these questions as they face a trial, and they need help understanding why. They ask themselves, their friends, their family, even their God, why did this happen to me? Now, in the United States, 61% of men and 51% of women report exposure to at least one lifetime traumatic event, and 90% of clients in the public behavioral health care centers have experienced some form of trial. Post-traumatic growth theory has been especially helpful for veterans and first responders, although its benefits are advantageous for anyone. As a therapist, I practice it with many of my clients. You've most likely watched someone who has gone through a traumatic experience, perhaps a loss of a child or some severe illness, yet they're able to function and even feel joy in their life. So, how is this possible? I would say they've experienced post-traumatic growth. When trials and traumas build up, getting help is essential. And this is not medical advice, but these are educational tips that I share with others. Researchers Richard Dudesky and Lawrence Calhoun developed and coined the phrase post-traumatic growth in the 90s. They were researching how to find wisdom by doing many surveys with widows and people that went through traumas like survivors in the military, and found that many people have a change in one of 5 areas in their life. The 5 areas were 1. Personal strength, 2. Relating well to others, 3. Appreciation for life, 4. A spiritual or existential change, and 5. The idea of new possibilities or a new mission or purpose in life. I will explain more in a minute, but first let me break down post-traumatic growth. The first word, post, it's a fancy word for the word after. For example, post-divorce or after the divorce, post-injury or after an injury, post-job loss or after the job loss. People will ask, well, what is traumatic? Therapists will often list several different levels or types of trauma when you go to see a professional help. The clinical diagnostic definition of trauma is debated, but generally includes actual or threatened death, serious injury, and or sexual violence. Other concepts of trauma include what we call acute trauma, or happen one time. An example might be a natural disaster, auto accidents, a severe death, or sudden death of a loved one, or diagnosis of a life-threatening disease, or a terrorist attack, or going to combat. Now, another form is called chronic trauma. It's a repeated exposure to one event, such as domestic violence over and over, or bullying. Now, one more concept is called complex trauma, which includes exposure to multiple traumatic events where you may experience many different traumas or events over a long period of time, like months or years. It's been estimated that about 3/4 of adults over the age 65 have been exposed to at least one traumatic event during their lifetime. And depending on the definition of traumatic event, the figure may be even higher. The theory that post-traumatic growth is, the word traumatic is whatever you decide is traumatic, emotionally or physically. Your life experiences now define your trauma. Let me explain the last word of growth. It's called an emotional growth in one of those 5 areas. So the key is that some people report positive change in several areas, but more than one is not needed. What has been discovered that many people have experienced post-traumatic stress disorder, they can achieve post-traumatic growth. This model emphasizes that post-traumatic growth originated from the struggle, from the highly stressful traumatic event. This event challenges your worldview or your core beliefs. This struggle, it gives rise to the possibility of past of emotional or cognitive or social change. Your past trials have prepared you to face this trial and future trials. So you will have to endure the pain and struggle after a trial or trauma and be willing to take positive actions that can help you survive and possibly thrive after the trauma. Now, doing this hard work can help you grow in one of 5 domains. So let's talk about the 5 domains. The first one, personal strength. Some people reported that they were stronger than they thought they were. They believed that they could get through this challenge than they could get through any challenge. One example might be in the military or lost, or we've seen people that have become blind and yet they overcome this challenge. In my experience, my brother's suicide, I found this realization in my personal growth to be vital in my path to recovery. Second one is relating to others. Some people who experienced a large trial trauma found that they had developed increased compassion for others. Many reported now they had a stronger connection to those around them, including their therapists, their support groups, their family members, their friends in the community. I also felt a deeper connection to many people in my life who came to my support during my crisis. I found that the key to post-traumatic growth is asking help from others. As I struggled through my trials, I needed help from therapists, friends, family, religious leaders, anyone who would help. The third term is the idea of new possibilities. Some people found ways to live their life or have some new paths and possibilities to help them overcome this challenge. On the other side of my personal trauma, I found an outpouring of motivation to actively seek out those who needed help. So I had to rethink these new paths and find new interests and new capabilities. I've seen many people that are paralyzed become Paralympians. I've experienced many personal traumas to include being sexually abused as a child, losing a child to miscarriage, losing my brother to suicide, and yet I found what is more important than the loss is the function and ability to find new ways to live my life. When you see people that overcome some of these trials with physical disabilities, many will tell me that it was the best thing that ever happened to them, which is difficult to understand. But with a lot of help from others, I found a new mission to help others like yourself with post-traumatic growth. I've written a few books with many stories that help other people that have endured trials to find what I call trial action paths to overcome post-traumatic growth. The fourth one is the new appreciation for life. So some of those studies reported having some new connection with nature or a sense of being given a second chance in life. Many said they were going to take this opportunity and every opportunity to use all the time that they had left now. I similarly found a deeper connection with my life. And despite, actively struggling, I decided to share my experience with others. The fifth one is a spiritual and existential growth. Some people found a deeper connection or investment in their religious philosophies and their spiritual world, or connected somehow to the universe. They might have had a change in spiritual connection or enhanced their ability or purpose to live a more meaningful life. And what does it mean to be a human being? They wanted to rethink the point of living on this earth, and what is the meaning of life and death? How are they connected to humanity? What I've also found is many people that are coming to counseling with me struggling with the trial trauma, they either move closer or away or have some kind of spiritual struggle during the trial. Years have passed my brother's death. I'm able to look back and recognize that my trauma was the catalyst for growth in all these 5 domains. I was able to heal and develop wisdom because of my experience. Some of you may be listening to this and thinking, it's impossible for me to find anything positive out of my trial or trauma. I hope you're enjoying my journey to finding post-traumatic growth. If you did, please share and like with others. If you want to hear the rest of my story, please watch this next video.